Welcome to the Legal Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jolene, and with the Legal Learning Center, I help pre-law students and law students with their legal journey. Today, we will chat with Lisa Lang, a truly non-traditional student, about her path to becoming an attorney and what she does today. After, I'll give you my top takeaways, but first, a quick word from our sponsor. Financially Free Aspiring Attorneys is a course with over $300,000 in money saving tips. If you want to go to law school, but you don't want to pay for it, visit legallearningcenter.com/financially free for more information on how you can avoid law loans.
My name is Lisa Lang, and I currently serve as the General Counsel for Kentucky State University. I have been there for going on 4 years now. Prior to working for Kentucky State University, I worked in various roles in state education agencies. And then prior to that, I was with the Attorney General's office. And then I did a stint before that in private practice, and I was also in the military.
Okay. So we're going to discuss your experience both before you were an attorney and a little bit after. So let's start with, where did you go to college?
So I initially went to college in Illinois, and I attended Western Illinois University.
Okay. What did you do after college?
I knew I always wanted to be a lawyer and to go to law school, but after having um, gone to school and getting an English degree, the thought of writing another paper or reading another book made me physically ill. So
I can understand that.
yeah, so that, and I got married, and then I moved to be with my husband, and then he immediately got deployed in Desert Storm. And so I was kind of not sure what I was going to do at that point.
Okay. So did you work at that time?
I was a domestic engineer at home.
That's correct. You did work.
Yes. So I did work in
Yes.
the home, but what I did do while he was gone, what I thought I would do is I started taking paralegal classes at night. And during the day, I volunteered at the Attorney General's office in New York. That's where my husband was stationed, in the Bureau of Consumer Frauds. So I was doing that for the purpose of becoming a paralegal, because I knew that I wanted to do the law, but I was not sure I was ready to become a lawyer. And so I did that. And one night, they had a recruiter from the military come to one of the classes that I was taking in paralegal studies. And they had indicated that they were looking for what they called a higher caliber soldier with a bachelor's degree, who would come in and be a paralegal. And up to that time, that military occupational specialty was very small, and it was closed. They were not accepting any more people into that MOS, but they were opening it up for people who had this credential. And at the time, my husband was deployed in Desert Storm, and we knew we were getting out. And he was frustrated with me because the assumption was he was going to get out, I was going to be a teacher, and he was going to go to school. And I kind of blew that dream smithereens. And so I couldn't get a job. And so while my husband was gone, I enlisted in the military while he was deployed. And when he came home, I said, "Hey, honey, guess what? I have a job. So when you get out, we'll be fine. I'm going to go in the military." And he was fine at first when he thought I was going to be an officer. But as soon as he found out I went enlisted, he was like, "What are you thinking?" But so yeah, that began my paralegal adventure in the military for 6 years.
Okay. Now, were you ever deployed?
I was deployed to Bosnia Herzegovina in the late 90s. At the time, I had just had my second child, and we were stationed in Germany. My son was 4 months old, and my daughter was a year and a half old. And they told me that I would be deploying on Christmas Eve. And so, yeah, our orders were for 11 months. So I left my husband and my two children in Mannheim, Germany, and I was deployed to Bosnia Herzegovina for 11 months, and I was attached to the 18th Military Police Brigade as their legal clerk.
Wow. So with two little ones, just gone for a year.
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty serious.
Yeah, it was a lot. I remember my grandmother saying, "Well, just tell them you're quitting." Like, it's a little more complicated than so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you were gone for almost a year. What happened when you came back?
So when I came back, I had made a decision. Prior to being deployed, I really thought that the military and being a paralegal was going to be the thing that I was going to do. But after that deployment, it made me realize that it was not the life I wanted with children and a family. And what they told me was that that deployment didn't count. So when you are talking about duty stations, when you're in a small military occupational specialty, you get a duty station stateside, then you go to some place like Germany where you can bring your family, and then um, the next duty position is an unaccompanied tour for a year in Korea. And they did not count my Bosnian deployment as part of my 1 year unaccompanied tour. And so they told me that chances are my next duty assignment would be an unaccompanied tour to Korea. And so I was like, yeah, no. So I did agree to re-enlist to go back to the States under the agreement that I would not go to Korea, and I could pick I could at least request a duty station as close to home as possible, because it was at that point I was going to exit the military.
Yeah, it seems like if you've left your family behind for a year, it should count for something.
You'd think, but what I would say is, we are active all over the world, and everybody is putting in those kinds of sacrifices, and you just have to be willing to make those sacrifices. And I just made a decision that it was not something I could do. And part of it is, when you sign up, you agree to make those sacrifices, but you don't know what that means until you actually start having kids and having a family. And then you realize, I'm not really sure I knew what I signed up for when I signed up for it. So there's a lot of people who do it every single day. I thank them for their service, but I just knew I did mine and couldn't do it anymore.
Yes, one of my closest friends in law school, while she was studying for the bar, and I can't remember if she was pregnant or she just had twins. I think she had just had twins. And her husband was a reservist and was also being told, you may be sent over to Iraq for a year. And yeah, she did not pass that bar because it was a little stressful. Fortunately for them, he did not get deployed, and she passed the bar the next time. So, but it's, you don't realize what it means until it's your turn. So yeah, it's a big deal. All right. So what did you do after you left the military then?
Prior to completing my tour at Fort Knox, I found a position in Louisville as a paralegal. And so I went there and I did that position. And I think maybe 6 months into being a litigation paralegal for a pretty big firm in Louisville, I decided that I was going to go ahead and give law school a shot. So I applied, and surprisingly enough, I was accepted. And the reason I say is that I took the LSAT. My LSAT score was nothing to write home about. And I took it, and I remember getting the score, and I remember calling my mom, and I was like, okay, God gives you signs. I have now had my sign. So this is not something I'm going to do. But I really think part of the reason why I ended up getting accepted, and they told me this too, was I was accepted into the night program. And they said, actually, a lot of the non-traditional students actually did fairly well. And so I was accepted into the program. I worked during the day as a paralegal, and then I went to law school at night. The part-time program was 4 years. And fortunately, because when I went in the military and I already had a degree, I had a choice between loan repayment or the GI Bill. I selected the GI Bill so I could use the GI Bill to pay for my law school.
Fabulous. So how was juggling children, job, and night school?
It was tough, and so the thing is, I just come off of a deployment from, in the military. So it didn't really feel all that different than the life I had been leading. I always believe in adding challenges upon challenges. And so I ended up getting pregnant the second semester of law school. So yeah, it was a lot. It was a blur. It was hard. It was not easy. But I was fortunate in that I had a very supportive husband. I had supportive children, and my bosses at the firm were very supportive. And I did not study at home. So when I was home, I was 100% there for my kids, or at least I tried.
It is really hard. And young children like that need a lot of attention. So yes, they want, a lot of mommy time. So, okay.
Yeah,
So how many gap years was that you took?
10.
Okay. So you went to law school 4 years. Now, did the GI Bill
Yes.
pay for part or all of the school?
So it paid for really all of it. Now, what I will say is all the money that I got did not go towards my tuition because of my surprise child. A lot of it ended up going to daycare. So if I had not had my child, it probably would have 100% paid for it. But it probably took me not very many years, but a few years after law school to pay it off because I had diverted the money, some of it for daycare for my youngest child, and then I also sent my husband and my 3 children a few years to places like Disney World, and I didn't give them a budget and just said, go. Here's money, just go. But it was kind of a reward for having to deal with me for 4 years.
Okay, so you were able to then, okay, that's great. I mean, taking out some loans is obviously not a problem. It's
Right.
much better than taking out
Yes.
all the loans. So,
Right. And it was a choice, and I made
yes.
a conscious choice. And my husband and I had a conversation about it because your mental health is as important. And I wanted to make sure that not only was I in a good place, but I wanted my family to be in a good place. So there were some things that I was willing to go into debt for, but we're not. I'm not talking any more than $10,000 over
Right.
4 years. That's nothing compared to what a lot of people had to go through. And I made that up pretty quickly as soon as I graduated because I went from being a paralegal at that firm to being an associate, and my salary doubled.
Yeah, that's always a nice thing if you have that job before you pass the bar exam is suddenly you're sitting at the desk and especially a lot of people are sitting maybe in a cubicle and
Yeah.
one day and then the next day they are in an office and are making a lot more
Yeah.
money at the same place.
So that, and it's funny when you talk about stress, I think there's stress associated with the fact that, oh my God, if I don't pass the bar exam, how am I ever going to find a job? But there was a tremendous amount of stress over I have a job, but it's contingent upon passing the bar. And I made the mistake of telling one of my friends at my law school, or I'm sorry, at the firm, what my number was. Because they put it on the internet, and the reason I told her my number because it was number 2. I was the second person in the room on the morning, and I was like, "Oh, 2's my lucky number, so I think I'm good." And so when I called everybody, because I took the day off because I thought I don't want to go to work if I fail it, so I'll go home. And I drove to Illinois, and I opened it up with my mom and my sister, and so I called work and I said, "Okay, good news, I passed." And like, "Oh yeah, we already know, we already checked." I'm like, "Oh, fabulous." She was like, "Well, you told Anne your number." I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot."
Yeah. Yeah, it's I've never heard of somebody giving out their number. So
That was insane. I was not even thinking.
yeah, but no, it's very true. Having worked at one place for a long time, I've seen people come and go through that process, and it's very nerve-wracking. Um, I've seen people pass, not pass, and I've had friends who at other firms, yeah, have had to take the bar several times, and it's very nerve-wracking when you feel like your employer is just relying on you to get this thing done and you just can't
Yeah.
seem to get it done. So,
I went to law school and I had a study group, and in my study group, there were 5 of us. And of the 5 of us, so we were all non-traditional. Of us, 2 passed, 3 did not. And the reason I believe they did not pass was because they did not do the Barbary, and or they did not do the Barbary and do exactly what they told you. I did it. I mean, it was like I was crazy. I'd freak out if I couldn't do one thing they told me to do. And my other friends continued to work, and they're like, oh, this is easy. I'm good. This is not hard. And I'm like, okay, that may be the case. And I may think I know this, but I'm doing exactly what they told me. And that's what they told me later, is if they had done exactly what they were told every single night, they would have passed.
I absolutely agree. My group of 3, the one was the Iraq person, so that she's kind of out, but the other
Yeah.
one didn't pass, and I would call her and she would be taking a nap. So,
Yes.
all I did was Barbary and I passed. I mean,
Yep.
I don't think it's too hard if you stick, slow and steady wins the race kind
Yep.
of a thing.
Yep.
I mean,
It's
it
a
is
good
hard, but
system. Yeah, it's a good system. And if you do exactly what they tell you to do,
yeah.
I don't know anybody who did exactly what they were told to do to the letter that did not pass. Most of the people had an inflated sense of confidence that thought they didn't have to do everything and listen to everything.
Yeah. I absolutely agree, because what I found at my school was a lot of the top ranked students actually didn't pass and a lot of the average students did pass. And I think that's a matter of that attitude. So
Fear,
yeah,
attitude and fear. Yeah,
yeah,
because you can be overconfident.
yeah,
And that fear, sometimes, if you harness it correctly, it can be the jet fuel that gets you through.
yeah. So I know after you passed the bar, at some point you worked for Big Law. When was that?
Yeah, so I went the firm that I worked for as a paralegal. I ended up being an associate for that firm for about 4 years.
Okay.
Um, when I would complain to the partner that I was working for about how tough life was, she would say she wouldn't have any part of it, because when I was a paralegal, she was an associate, and then when I became an associate, she became a partner, and she was like, Lisa, you have no room to complain. You knew exactly what you were getting into. So, and I think what people need to understand too, when you become an associate and you go into big law or you go into a private practice, um, they hire a whole bunch of people at the associate level, not knowing that not everybody is going to be offered the partnership. And it's like you give it a certain amount of time. And if you do not develop in the way that they think is a good fit with the firm that you're at, you will be told that you do not have a future there. And that's what happened to me. And there was a part of me that was a little bit of angry and a little bit of resentment when I had an evaluation and they basically told me that I needed to start thinking about another plan, because partnership was not in my future. And that was a really hard thing to hear. But, and everybody says, when one door, shuts, another one opens. And I think that conversation was the best conversation I had. And it caused me to go and look for other opportunities. And I did. And it was because I left private practice and I went to work for the Attorney General's office in Kentucky. That job was wonderful. It gave me so much confidence, and I had so many positive things that happened and so many wins that were wins. I either was an instrumental part in a group or I won on my own. And so it was, for the first time, it reinforced, because I had this feeling when they told me that I wasn't partnership material and I didn't have a future at my firm, that somehow I might need to consider not being a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
Going to the Attorney General's office made me feel like, you know what? I am a good lawyer and it's a business. And if I didn't fit with them, that was just not, I didn't fit their need, but that didn't make me less of a person, a lawyer. But it's hard when you're going through it and you hear that.
For sure. It's like a breakup, and then you wonder, what am I good for? But
Yeah.
no, there's so many different types of legal jobs out there. Yeah, there's private, there's government, there's in-house, and I know you're in-house now. So
Right.
what's the difference with in-house?
So, what I really love about what it is that I do now is that when I worked for the Attorney General's office, it was litigation, just like I had done in private practice. And while at the Attorney General's office, I developed an expertise in the area of education. I left there and initially went in-house at a state agency, Kentucky Department of Education. And I did part of the work I did was litigation, but part of what I did was as an assistant general counsel. And so I think and over time, and now I work for the Kentucky State University. Over time, I began phasing out the litigation practice and doing more what a typical in-house lawyer does, which is advising the organization on a whole variety of matters. And what I enjoyed about it is having been in litigation, I could work with them to solve problems and to prevent problems or to position themselves when problems came up, that the problems would not be as bad, or maybe we could handle them without having to go into litigation. So I love working in-house now because I say it all the time, I'm a strategic partner and I help solve problems. And I really enjoy it. And I enjoy it's an intersection of business and law. And I love the intersection of business and law. And the reason I was able to go in-house was because I developed an expertise in an area in the law.
I love that because it also sounds like there's a better work-life balance there too.
You know what's so funny about that? What I have learned is that it has nothing to do with the job that you do. It has everything to do with you as a person and how you set boundaries. Because I work now for a university, and this university has students who are on campus 24 hours a day. So there are days when it feels like there is no such thing as work-life balance, because it's just, and especially with COVID, there was so much that we had to work through to figure out. So in some respects, I feel like I work just as hard as I did when I was in private practice. In some ways, I feel even less in control of my schedule than I was in litigation with court orders and knowing, to some degree what I had to do in order to plan for a trial. But what I would say is that experience has taught me how to create boundaries. And I like to think, as the supervisor, and I posted about this the other day on LinkedIn, is asking the question, does it have to be done now? And, before, my instinct was someone say this needed to get done, and then I would just put everything aside and do it. But sometimes I think it's worth asking the question, does it have to happen now? Or can I take off the 2 weeks you've just given me off? Because it will be there when I get back. And the nice thing is, yes, I have job security, because when that matter's taken care of, there's going to be something right on the heels. So you have to learn to create the boundaries, rest, relax, recharge. Now, when you're more junior in your career, it's a little bit harder to do because you have somebody else who's setting the tone and creating the culture. And so I think, there's something to be said for, you don't find a job, you find a good boss, because that boss will allow you to do that. But being a lawyer in general, that work-life balance, to me, it's you're going to always feel like you're out of balance, and it's always about trying to figure out how to get it back in balance.
Now, I know that you said that your university is actually working on a new program that will benefit students interested in law. So what's that
Yes.
program?
So we call it a 3+3 agreement. And so we've got law schools in Kentucky, none of which are at my university. But what we're doing is we're working with these law schools to create a program whereby they come to our school for 3 years, and then on the fourth year they go to the law school. And so the fourth year is essentially your senior year of your undergrad, and it's the first year of your law school experience. So theoretically, you can get it done in let's say you do it in 6 years instead of 7. So it's taking a
That's
year off.
That's great. So it's just a combined little bit of a messy program, it sounds like.
Yes.
But yeah, how much money does a student who does a 3+3 program end up saving in general? Because I know every
Yeah,
year
and I'd have
is
to
different.
take a look at it because I'm really not sure how much it costs to go to law school now, but it is pretty significant by shaving off one whole year of law school. Because in the 20 years, and I can't even believe it's been 20 years since I've gone to law school, the debt that so many students take on has skyrocketed. So when you think about it, and that's partly because of the cost of tuition has gone up so much.
So now for this 3+3 program, do you have to enroll at a certain point?
Yeah, I think we're working through the terms, but I believe that you have to give notice by your junior year. So it's
Okay.
as a freshman. But I do think what they're trying to do is we will try and promote the program and encourage people to participate in events relating to the program, because I think what's so very important for all potential law school students to do is to do everything you can prior to making the commitment to the law school and going to law school to make sure that this is what you want. And so if you can do internships, anything
Right.
that you can do to get closer to the law to make sure it's what you want.
That makes sense. Okay, so you come into college as a freshman, um, probably already kind of have that idea of I'm kind of interested in law or something like law. So start looking into that program, participating in internships or things of that nature. And then by junior year, commit to the program. And then your senior year, you would go to the other university and do
Yes.
3 years there. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
And we're talking about doing a lot of mentorship programs. And we have a pre-law society. So I could see our students joining the pre-law society like as freshman or sophomore, and then they'll be given the opportunity to participate in programs that we are partnering with the law school, to include maybe a boot camp. We've talked about doing a boot camp with the schools we're partnering with, where they'll teach them writing and legal analysis, and doing all sorts of things that will help them to make the decision that they want to be part of that program, because we don't want anybody in the program that is not committed to it and is not willing to put the time and effort into it.
And now those students would not need to take the LSAT?
That is under negotiation, but at this
Okay.
time, everybody, the three law schools that I'm working with are going to all require the LSAT.
Okay.
So
And
there will be LSAT prep too, I've also heard.
okay. And then is there going to be, and I know, like you said, it's all
Yep.
still in
Yes.
negotiation, but
Yes.
Is there a certain GPA that these schools are requiring?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And that is the thing too, is when you go into the program, the law schools do reserve the right to not accept you.
Okay.
It's not guaranteed, but yeah. And because we're an HBCU, we've got some other programs that we are developing. For instance, we want to be able to provide our students with the money that it takes to take the LSAT. So it's not an expense they have to pay. So there's some other things that we are working on, benefits.
Yeah.
We're trying to help create for them. But yeah, if you're still not going to get around the GPA, you're still not going to get around the LSAT score. And, until law schools come up with a better way of identifying candidates who are most likely going to be able to complete the program, those are the measuring sticks they use. And, what we all have to remember is that law schools are rated and evaluated based on their ability to get people through the program. And they've got metrics that are not going to look good for accreditation purposes or for promotional purposes if it looks like the students that come there go and get the debt but then can't graduate or can't pass the bar.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see the benefits of this program. I know for someone like myself, like you said, you have problems memorizing. I needed some time. I needed some time off to take a brain break. I needed time to improve my GPA my senior year. I think I just needed that time to study for the LSAT aside from school. I'm so impressed with students who add the LSAT on top of their studies.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted no part of that. So I took gap years so I could do that separately.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work. And so it's great because those who are kind of already on that trajectory of they can do anything, especially those who college comes super easy for them. This is a great program. It just gets them right through it and saves them money. The less debt, the better.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you posted on LinkedIn. I know you have a series on LinkedIn, Why Do This, Not That, which I have been loving. Where did you come up with that idea?
So many people were getting conflicting advice on certain areas. And so what I wanted to be able to do is to say, there are some people who believe that this is the way you do it, but this is the way I want to tell you that I think is a better way to do it. And more importantly, why is it better for you to do it this way? Because there's a lot of noise out there. I was hoping to use the series, especially for in-house lawyers, and I've tried to write it in a little bit more of a general manner so that it can be transferred to other professions.
One of your posts really resonated with me, which was get out of your seat and talk to people. Talk to, accounting, talk to whoever. And I can tell you there's been several times in my career where doing something like that has been so beneficial. I had one time, I was a newer attorney, new to my corporation, and I was walking by an empty office and there's a guy working in there. And I'm just like, he doesn't belong there. Who is he?
Right.
And so I just said, hey, who are you? And we just chatted for a minute, and then I went back to my desk and I, did my work. It turns out he was, someone in the corporation that was traveling. Okay, no big deal. A couple days later, my boss comes into my office and he's like, so that was our regional manager, and he's really impressed with you. And I'm like, I just said hi. Like that's all I did. We didn't even really talk. Like I just said hi.
Part of what he probably saw in you and in that interaction is that's who you are as an employee, and it doesn't matter who the person is you're speaking with. You are friendly, respectful, so I think it's kind of like, that show where it talks about the undercover boss, where you go in and shows that you are going to treat everybody the same way, regardless of who they are. Now, from what I love about doing it is there are so many things that I have been able to fix with the help of my internal partners, I like to call them. And I'll give an example. When I'm reviewing contracts, I've got a checklist of what I'm looking through, but there's one provision that I never looked at. And that provision is that you have to pay your bills within 30 days. And what I came to find out in talking with our purchasing director is that we were getting eaten alive in late fees, because the way our accounting system was set up, you had to do it on 30 days. And I was approving contracts that said net 10.
It's important to reach out and be like, hey, who are you? How can we, work together more? I mean, we all are part of the same system.
Yeah. And what's so funny is all these posts are born out of me doing what I say not to do. So most of the time it's because I have personally done what I'm saying not to do. A lot of my experience, I think, was valuable because it helped me prepare for the job that I have, and it has helped me from not making some missteps some other people have, because I made them earlier in my career, not as a lawyer.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, I really appreciate your time today. If people want to get into contact with you, where can they best find you?
LinkedIn is probably the best thing, and it's just Lisa Lang.
Okay, I'll make sure to link that up in the show notes. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Before we get into my top takeaways, a quick word from our sponsor, Juno. If you need to take out student loans, check in with Juno first. Juno can often offer law students 1 to 2% less in interest rates below the federal government, and not only with no cost to the student, but oftentimes cash back as well. Visit joinjuno.com/P like podcast /legal learning center for more information. All right, so my top takeaways from this chat with Lisa. First, I think the overall theme for today is life is not linear. I see so many students who are in a rush to get to the finish line, but there is no finish line. You need to take it day by day and enjoy the journey. Now, don't worry about how fast others are going. Lisa took her time and she took a few twists and turns, but in the end, she had law school paid for. She has a nice job. She's enjoying life. Definitely were some pros and cons. I'm not going to say there weren't, but look around, take your time, and figure out what works for you. All right. So, number 2, with respect to the military, there were definitely some pros and cons, right? So, she got law school paid for, as I said, but she had to leave behind her babies. It's really hard to understand what's being asked of you when you sign up with the military until you actually have to do it. And then that 1 year didn't even count. So check it all out. It may be something that you're interested in to help pay for college or law school, but heavily weigh the negative side of that too. All right. And then she also is the author of the Why Do This, Not That series on LinkedIn, which is super helpful. It provides valuable tips for lawyers and for law students. So you don't want to miss out with that. Make sure you follow her or connect with her on LinkedIn so you don't miss that series. And then, as a side note, she mentioned the 3+3 program that they are beginning to implement at her school. We will have a guest in a few weeks on the show to discuss the 3+3 program in more detail. So stay tuned. All right, that's it for this episode. All the tips, links, and so forth will be in the show notes. The full transcript will be available at legallearningcenter.com/Lisa. And next week, we will chat with Lindsay of WorldWise Tutoring. She's going to explain how executive functioning can help you do better in law school. If you learned something today, please like, share, comment, subscribe so that more people can see this show and it can help those who may need it. Thanks.